Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Future of the world,
Hare Krishna,
future of the
Hare
moment.
Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
It's also, you go 4 pages from the back, you'll see a QR code.
Dear devotees, my humble obeisances to you all, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Welcome everyone to His Holiness Candramauli Swami Maharaj's daily class.
You can
Today
scan
we are going to continue with Srimad Bhagavatam series of first canto, 12th chapter, verse number 23. Hare
you
Krishna.
do that, you'll get a video.
My humble obeisances to you, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. You can please take over, Maharaj. I'll share my screen.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Today we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, chapter 12, entitled The Birth of Emperor Parikshit. And this is verse number 23, continuation in the series. Pita Mahastama Samyehi Prasade Giriso Pamaha Asraya Sarvabhutanam Yata Devo Ramasrayaha. Translation. The child will be like his grandfather Yudhisthira or Brahma in equanimity of mind. I don't want any more. He will be munificent like the Lord of the Kailash hill, Shiva, and he will be the resort of everyone, like the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayan, who is even the shelter of the goddess of fortune. I'll read it again, referring to Maharaj Parikshit. This child will be like his grandfather Yudhisthira or Brahma. In equanimity of mind, he will be munificent like the Lord of the Kailash hill, Shiva, and he will be the resort of everyone, like the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayan, was even the shelter of the goddess of fortune. Srila Prabhupada's purport, it is a little lengthy, so please listen up. Mental equanimity refers both to Maharaj Yudhisthira and to Brahma, the grandfather of all living beings. According to Sridhar Swami, the grandfather referred to is Brahma, but according to Vishwanath Chakravarti, the grandfather is Maharaj Yudhisthira himself. But in both cases, the comparison is equally good because both of them are recognized representatives of the Supreme Lord, and thus both of them have to maintain mental equanimity, being engaged in welfare work for the living being. Any responsible executive agent at the top of administration has to tolerate different types of onslaughts from the very persons for whom he works. Brahma was criticized even by the gopis, the highest perfectional devotees of the Lord. The gopis were dissatisfied with the work of Brahmaji because Lord Brahma, as the creator of the universe, created eyelids which obstructed their seeing Lord Krishna. Did not tolerate a moment's blinking of the eyes, for it kept them from seeing their beloved Lord Krishna. So what to speak of others who are naturally very critical of every action of a responsible man? Similarly, Maharaj Yudhisthira had to cross over many difficult situations created by his enemies, and he proved to be the most perfect maintainer of mental equanimity in all critical circumstances. Therefore, the example of both grandfathers for maintaining equanimity of mind is quite fitting. So you see here from this first paragraph of the purport that there is a comparison and a description of the equanimity given to two persons, Maharaj Yudhisthira and Lord Brahma. Okay, And now we continue on. Lord Shiva is celebrated the demigod who awards gifts to the beggars. His name is therefore Asutos, or one who is pleased very easily. He is also called the Bhutanath, or the Lord of the common folk, who mainly are attached to him because of his munificent gifts, even without considering of the after effects. Ravana was very attached to Lord Shiva, and he very easily pleased him. Ravana became so powerful that he wanted to challenge the authority of Lord Ram. Of course, Rama was never helped by Lord Shiva when he fought with Rama, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and the Lord of Lord Shiva. To Rikasura, Lord Shiva awarded a benediction, which was not only awkward, but also disturbing. Rikasura became empowered by the grace of Lord Shiva to vanquish anyone's head simply by touching it. Although this was awarded by Lord Shiva, the cunning fellow wanted to make an experiment of the power by touching the head of Lord Shiva. Thus, the Lord had to take shelter of Vishnu to save himself from trouble. And the Lord Shiva, by his illusionary potency, asked Vikrasura to make an experiment with his own head. The fellow did it, and he was finished. And so the world was saved from all sorts of trouble by such a cunning beggar of the demigod. The excellent point is that Lord Shiva never denies anyone any sort of gift. He is therefore the most generous, although sometimes some kind of mistake is made. We hear a little description of Lord Shiva's munificence, and he doesn't discriminate giving out benedictions sometimes. Now we hear the next about Lord Ramchandra. Rama, this is not Ramachandra, but Rama means the goddess of fortune. And her shelter is Lord Vishnu. Lord Vishnu is the maintainer of all living beings. There are innumerable living beings, not only on the surface of this planet, but also in other hundreds and thousands of planets. All of them are provided with all necessities of life for the progressive march towards the end of self-realization. But on the path of sense gratification, they are put into difficulty by the agency of Maya and the illusionary energy, and so to travel the path of false plan of economic development. Such economic development is never successful because it is illusory. These men are always after the mercy of the illusionary goddess of fortune, but they do not know that the goddess of fortune can live only under the protection of Vishnu. Without Vishnu, the goddess of fortune is an illusion. We should therefore seek the protection of Vishnu instead of directly seeking the protection of the goddess of fortune. Only Vishnu and the devotees of Vishnu can give protection to all. And because Maharaj Parikshit was himself protected by Vishnu, it was quite possible for him to give complete protection to all who wanted to live under his rule. From the ground, from the wind, the yes, the Lord, the Lord, the Lord, the Lord. That's really never come will not touch my shoes or the heart. From our own Vishnu, but I will Vishnu. Srimati Bhakti, Vedanta Swami Ishinamine. Namaste, Saraswati Devi Gauravani Sattara. Dear Visesha Sindhivadi, Yakti Sattara. Vanchakalpa, Saraswati, Siddhan Dindi, Saraswati. The Gitanam Bhavani, Yo, Vaishnava, Yo, Namaha. Jai Sri Krishna, Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda. We are great of the Bhagavad Gita, Sri Gaur Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama. So we're hearing continuously the good qualities of Maharaj Parikshit, although he was just born, all of his apparent successes and qualities have already been enumerated, although he hasn't done anything yet. As we were explaining, this is the characteristic of the quality of such Brahmins. They could actually see the future simply by astrological evaluation. So here he's being compared to both Brahma and Yudhisthira for his magnanimity. This is a equanimity. This is a very interesting quality, equanimity. There's a quality that allows one to live in Krishna consciousness happily. I mean, they are equally disposed to all and do not favor one person over another. But like Krishna himself, they actually reciprocate according, just like Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Samoham samabhuteshu name dvesha srina priya. I envy no one. I'm not partial to anyone, nor I'm equal to everyone. But anyone who renders devotional service to me, I'm a friend in them, and they are a friend in me. So what Krishna is saying, and he confirms it also again in the Bhagavad Gita, Yeyatam mam papadyante tam stakaiva bhajamyaham mama vartmanu vartante manusha partha sarvashya. As you approach me, I reciprocate accordingly. Then he goes on to say, no one is outside of my path, either because everything emanates from the Supreme Lord and is controlled by the Supreme Lord directly for his devotees, indirectly through the material energy for the materialists. But Krishna controls everything. And therefore he's reciprocating either directly with his devotees or indirectly through the material energy with his non-devotees on how that living being approaches the Lord. Sometimes we wonder why things are happening the way they are, because maybe the way we're approaching life or the way we're approaching the Lord is not actually in line with the quality that is needed in order to get the result we expect. Sometimes we keep doing the same thing over and over again, and we wonder why we get the same result. Maybe you have that experience that you want something to come out good, but you're habituated to doing things in the same way. And it comes out differently. It comes out the same way all the time, only because we have the tendency to think that just because I want it to come out differently, it should come out differently, but it doesn't. Because as Krishna says, according to how you approach, there is a reward there. So equanimity is a quality of Krishna, but he does give favor to his devotee who, in other words, just like within the family, you'll see there may be different children. And some children are very obedient to the parent and are very affectionate to the parent. And others maybe not so much, and maybe even disobey the parent. So the parent loves each of the children equally, but they reciprocate differently. So for the disobedient child, maybe some correction, some punishment is there. And that is also a way of loving that child. And for the one who is very obedient and affection, they get all the good things that the parents have, and they share it with their children. And in such a way that the children, become more and more affectionate and attached to the parents in such a way that the relationship becomes very, very sanguine, very wonderful. So although the parent is not partial, it reciprocates differently. Same, Krishna is the same way. I think we all are, everyone has that characteristic, how people relate to you, you more or less reciprocate in that way. And sometimes there is a difference in order to show some extra mercy or some extra kindness, or to bring about a different result in that relationship. One may reciprocate a little differently. So of course, the point here is that Parikshit Maharaj will have that quality. And just like when he went to chastise that wrongdoer who was beating the legs of a cow and a bull. I mean, he wanted to kill him immediately, but he took shelter of the Lord, of Parikshit Maharaj. And Parikshit Maharaj pardoned him and then gave him a place to stay. Only because he surrendered. So therefore, this is another quality of a great soul. They reciprocate accordingly and are always beneficial, even to the wrongdoers. Prabhupada says here, if you're in a position of authority, sometimes you can expect people who work under you to not be up to the standard that is expected. Just like we have the initiation process. So we go before our spiritual master, and the initiation is there. We're all excited, and all the devotees are there, and it's very, celebrating type of atmosphere, and everybody is happy, and the guru is really giving out mercy, and disciples are enthusiastically giving their vows sometimes, and chanting their prayers of commitment. But then when time goes on, things change sometimes. Oh yeah, too hard to chant 16 names. Or maybe, yeah, 4 negative principles, but a little coffee here and there doesn't matter. I'm not going to do it every day. And I really like onions. It makes food taste really nice. I think Prabhupada's a little fanatical. So, we could sometimes justify, or you go to a party and your friends are there, they hand you a beer, a cocktail, and you say, well, I don't do that. And you say, come on, it's a party. Live it up once in a while. Why you so? And you somehow acquiesce. So, but we always have to remember that in commitment, especially in initiations and also in marriage, there is a commitment that each person entering into these types of relationships is duty bound to follow. And that makes the relationship, what we say, develop. It'll develop into higher forms of affection and success between each in terms of that relationship. So commitment is there. And I think Radhanath Swami was saying, we make advancement in Krishna consciousness by how much we take on a responsibility in our practice of devotional service. But we should not take on more responsibility than we can actually handle. And then we become somewhat deficient and we can't manage that responsibility. But to take on responsibility means to put oneself in a position to offer more service. We might even say better service. And also at the same time, it is good for one's spiritual advancement. To not avoid responsibility. Responsibility is a quality that enlightens the soul in their relationship with Krishna. But sometimes devotees take on too much and then they can't manage it. So it should be done with good intelligence on how to manage it. So you see here, in taking that responsibility, sometimes they overdo it. And Prabhupada says they give trouble to the leaders. They give trouble to the persons that they're responsible to because they don't live up to their commitment. The Prabhupada said the leaders, the gurus, the teachers, the parents, they have to somehow or other tolerate the inefficiencies of their disciples or their parents, and somehow at the same time go on with their Krishna consciousness. So Parikshit Maharaj is being compared to persons who are ideal, such as Lord Brahma, and here specifically King Yudhisthira. We're also hearing a little bit about Lord Shiva. We can bring up that part on the screen. Okay, Lord Shiva, a little higher up. Go up a little. Okay, there you go. So Lord Shiva, he's known as Asutosh. Says that he's easily pleased, and he's also known to be easily angry too. He has both. But tos means pleasure in this case. He's easily pleased. So when somebody performs austerities, penances, and approaches Lord Shiva for some benediction on behalf of those austerities, he's very magnanimous and very, what we say, enthusiastic to grant that. And Prabhupada points out here, and this is an interesting story in the life of Lord Shiva, where this one demon, Brikasura, he wanted to have the power that anyone's head he would touch would immediately crack and the person would die. So he started to perform austerities by taking a knife and cutting his flesh off his body and throwing it to the fire and chanting mantras to Lord Shiva. And then he was about to throw himself into the fire. And Lord Shiva came and said, you know, you rascal, stop there. And he said, well, what do you want? And then he was so happy to see his worshipful deity. And he said, I want the benediction that whoever head I touch will crack. And this is like, not really a thing you ask for, but because he was a demon, and Lord Shiva granted it. But then his demon was looking at Parvati, thinking, I have to get rid of Shiva. So he went over to touch Shiva's head, and then Shiva realized, I have to get out of here. So he started to flee, and the demon was fleeing behind him. And then they were running. And this story also has a very important principle to it. At one point, Lord Shiva started to pray for help. He couldn't save himself in this case. And so Lord Vishnu appeared as a little child, a little boy. And as they were running past, Vishnu used his Maya and said, hey, what are you doing? He's talking to the demon. He said, well, he stopped and said, Lord Shiva has given me this benediction. Anybody's head I touch will crack, so I'm going to try it on Lord Shiva. And using the Vishnu Maya, that means the bewildering potency of the Lord, he said, Lord Shiva has not been well lately. He gives out benedictions, they don't work. And you can prove that. Just touch your own head, you'll see it doesn't. So this foolish demon, bewildered by the Maya and Vishnu Maya, he touched his own head, and that was the end of that guy. To everyone's relief. And then Lord Vishnu said to Shiva, why are you giving him benedictions? But this story illustrates, because sometimes, and it still goes on, it has a long history in this regard. People say, is Shiva the Supreme Personality of Godhead? Or is Vishnu the Supreme Personality? And there have been many debates over that. Because in some Puranas, it does say that Shiva is the Supreme Lord. I think it's in the Linga Purana, also in the Shiva Purana, and also all other places. But here from this pastime, which is in the 10th canto of the Bhagavatam, it illustrates that when Shiva got in trouble, only Vishnu could save him. So this pastime really puts clarity on this discussion. And it's actually, the Supreme Lord is Vishnu, who is an expansion actually of Lord Krishna. And so in order to make that point, that particular pastime is in the Bhagavatam. Because people even today fight over that. Sometimes devotees are approached by people who worship Lord Shiva. And they say, well, should we give up our worship of Lord Shiva? We say no. You worship Lord Shiva, but don't worship him for material benediction. You can worship him as what is called Vaishnavaram Yata Shambhu. It's mentioned in the Bhagavatam that Nimna Ganga Yata Ranga Devanam Achutavayam Vaishnavanam Yata Shambhu Puranaya Vidatataha. That of all of the rivers, Ganges is the most pure. Out of all of the deities, Achyuta, Krishna, is the highest and most worshipful. Out of all of Vaishnavas, Shiva is the best of all Vaishnavas. And out of all Puranas, Srimad Bhagavatam is Amalam Purana, or that pure Purana. That's at the very, very end of the Bhagavatam, that point is being made. So Shiva's position is that he is the greatest of all devotees. But he's a very mysterious personality because he plays many roles at the same time. And therefore, people sometimes know him only in one role, and therefore they designate him in that way. But there are those who worship him as the Supreme Lord, and that's not wrong. We don't discourage that. If they want to worship Shiva as the Supreme Lord, then worship him in that way, because if they do, then Shiva will lead them to Krishna or Vishnu. If their worship of Shiva is in line with proper worship, in other words, accordingly, then Shiva will bring them to Krishna, Vishnu. And I think many devotees in our movement were Shivites, maybe some of you still are. I don't know. I was. I even got the name Lord Shiva. That's my name. so because I was very, very devoted to Lord Shiva before I joined the Hare Krishna movement. But then I also met many others who were also similar. But after coming to Krishna consciousness and practicing worship of both Vishnu and Shiva at the same time, they understood the position of Shiva. And Shiva is most magnanimous. And he's also called the father of all living entities. And his wife, Durga Devi, is the controller of the material energy. She's very powerful. Tristi Stisti Palaya Sadhyeva, Chayeva, Vibhakti Durga, Ichana Rupa, Yafas, yes, Esa Tesa, Govinda Mari Purusham Tamaham Vijami. She's very powerful. She can create, she can destroy. So Shiva is a very powerful personality. So we honor Lord Shiva, and he is very much part of our practice in devotional service. We see him as the greatest of all devotees. We can pray to Lord Shiva for his mercy so we can worship Krishna and Vishnu better and better. We don't ask for material benediction. I was preaching in Cincinnati, Ohio, many, many years ago, and there was this one lady, I forgot her name. She was a powerful acharya, came from India. I think her name was something Mai. Forgot her name. And she had a large following. She came to Cincinnati and she was preaching, the worship. And she was glorifying Lord Shiva, the supreme office. And I came to one of her programs to find out more about her. Forgot her name. Used to wear a big hat. Huh? What's her name? Amritam? Anandamayi? Maybe. She was young. She was not old. She was not, what is it called? Ma? What's that lady's name? Was Ma? She's older. She's powerful. But this lady, she was also powerful. But then later on, I found out, she was looking at me and smiling because she knew I was a devotee of Krishna. Later on, I found out that she worships Krishna, but she preaches Shiva because it's more beneficial. To worship Krishna means you have to surrender. Surrender means that ultimately you have to follow the instructions given by Krishna through his spiritual master. And therefore, people don't want to do that. They want something cheap. And just like when Prabhupada was here, after preaching for a few years, a group of yogis who had come from India, they also had their followers. They came to Prabhupada and said, Swamiji, you have done miracles. You have taken these Western young boys and girls and made them into Vaishnavas. They wanted to come to congratulate Prabhupada. And Prabhupada said, if you know what is right, why are you cheating people? Because they were preaching something else. You take this mantra and you can become, God or something. So, many people who came from India, although they understood Krishna was the supreme, they never preached that because they felt it was not possible for the Westerners to follow that. And they were also interested in followers. And Prabhupada said, I didn't care about followers. I came to give the truth. When I came to give, Krishna says, you're a rascal. I'm telling you, you're a rascal. Amajanti Mamudha Manasima Paramaspada Parambhama Majanatam Mama Bhuta Maheshwar. Fools deride me when I come in my transcendental form, when I come in my form as Krishna. They do not know my transcendental nature, my supreme dominion. The Prabhupada said, I didn't care about followers. I wanted to give the actual understanding that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and you are his eternal servant. Jiva Sarupai Krishna Nityadev. He didn't come to patronize, he didn't come to get followers, he didn't come to become popular as a great spiritualist. He came to give the truth. And Prabhupada also said some people left because they could not accept that. No illicit sex, no intoxication, no gambling, no meat eating. And many of the young boys, not many, some who came, they couldn't follow that. And then later they left because they thought, Swamiji, he's too conservative. He's too conservative. He's denying the basic principles of life. So Prabhupada said, I'm giving the process. These 4 pillars are the pillars of sinful activity. By avoiding these 4 sinful activities, you are free from all reactions of all sinful activities. Because he said, all sinful activities reside in these 4 main forms of sinful activity. Okay. When Prabhupada's godbrother went to preach in London, and he met one Lord, his name was Lord Jetland, or the Lord of Jetland, I forgot his name. Prabhupada mentions him. And so Prabhupada's godbrother was preaching to him, and the Lord said, can you make me a brahmana? And he said, yes. What do I have to do? Well, you follow these 4 restrictions. No illicit sex, no intoxication, no gambling, no meeting. Impossible. And when Prabhupada heard that, he said, I came to give something impossible. So let me try anything. So, especially in the West, and the Lord of Jetland said, these things, they are our life. We live by them. These sinful activities go on as norms within Western society. If you deny people like that, you deny them the basic human resources of happiness. But Prabhupada didn't care. He said, no, this is the way it is. You follow. And if you do that, you'll become happy, you'll become purified, you'll actually become full of knowledge, and you'll actually connect with Krishna in loving devotional praise. So, yeah. I'm bringing that up because we just had this initiation yesterday. And I've seen many initiations how people get all excited. And then as time goes on, it's not that they will, but some of them are tempted to break the principles and not follow the principles. So we have to remain very careful to keep these 4 principles forward and to chant on 16 rounds every day. And Prabhupada said, if you do that from the time you're initiated to the end of your life, you will go back home like that. If you strictly follow these 4 principles and chant 16 rounds minimum every day from these. That's how spiritually potent that process is. It's very strong. If we follow that, and of course, whatever service we can do is very much wanted and welcomed also. And that will help us to connect with Krishna more and more. Okay, so then here's a little bit about Lord Shiva, how magnanimous he is, but sometimes he makes mistakes in giving out his magnanimity. It's like Prabhupada was like Lord Shiva too. And people sometimes would come to him. He would give them initiation. And after a while, they would just leave for no reason. And then one devotee said, Prabhupada, just the other day, you gave that person initiation. Now they're gone. Prabhupada said they were never initiated. Because initiation means in the heart. When you make that heartfelt commitment to Krishna, to the spiritual master, to the assembly of Vaishnavas, to the sacred fire, then you actually are we're in the mindset of commitment. The formalities of the ceremony consummates or finalizes that what's already in the heart. But if it's not in the heart, the formality is just a ritual. So it is. One may think they're initiated, but they're not, unless it actually comes from their practice in devotional. Bhaktisiddhanta makes that point too. He says initiation is a day-by-day affair. In other words, every day we have to recommit ourselves to what we did at the time of initiation. 16 rounds, 4 regular principles, becoming the servant of the servant, performing devotional service. It's an ongoing realization of my position and the process by which we make advancement towards the goal of life, which is prema, vimaka, mahan, to develop love for Krishna, which is already there in the heart, but it remains hidden, and the process to bring it out is the process given by the Acharyas, especially Srila Prabhupada. Okay, we go on to the next one, Rama. So here we hear a little bit about he will become like Yama Devi. And mentioned here that he will be like this. He will be the resort of everyone, like the Supreme Personality of God in Narayan, who is even the shelter of the goddess of fortune. So the goddess of fortune always resides on the chest of Lord Vishnu. But people approach the goddess of fortune in order to get some material fortune. They worship Durga Devi. Rama is the supreme. It's not Rama, it's Rama. Sometimes we say Rama or Rama Devi. She is the supreme goddess of fortune. She expands herself into many forms, and Durga, Kali, Bhadra, Vijaya, Mahakali, these are all expansions of Rama, the goddess of fortune. People worship these different forms in order to get material benedictions. And sometimes they will receive some material benediction. But it says here that there are men who are always after the mercy of the illusionary goddess of fortune, but they do not know that the goddess of fortune can live only under the protection of Vishnu. So that was Ravana. Ravana thought, well, I'm going to steal the wife of this personality. He didn't know he was the Supreme Lord. And she was the supreme goddess of fortune, Sita Devi. But what did he get? He didn't get fortune, he got misfortune. So one who tries to take material fortune without the source of that material fortune, which is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, you try to take a wife of somebody, then that husband might kill you, because that's his wife. So the supreme goddess of fortune was taken by Ravana, and he thought he was going to benefit from it. But what did he do? He lost everything, including his own life. So the materialists, they want Sita without Ram. They want Lakshmi without Narayan. They also call Lakshmi, money sometimes. Hey, where's the Lakshmi? But that's the energy of the Lord, and she manifests spiritually as the goddess of fortune, and materially in the different manifestations of herself for the worship of the materialists who want material things. But ultimately, Prabhupada says their worship is illusionary. So just like people who are wealthy, they're miserable. Most of them. They're never satisfied with the wealth they have. They're always worried about trying to protect it, increase it, keep it from being stolen. Is he my friend, or is he a friend of my wealth? When people come to rich people, and, yeah, I want to be your friend. They're not really a friend. They're friend of the wealth. So being in that very rich position materially, people are always in anxiety, more so than the common people, because they're always thinking, you got to protect it, you got to stand it, you got to keep it from being stolen. There's so many things. So in the Bhagavatam, in the 15th, I'm sorry, no, in the 11th canto, there are 15 listings on the inebrities of money. Can you, Srimati, can you go to that chapter?
Yes, Maharaj. Which chapter, Maharaj?
I think it's the chapter with, what is it named? The Avanti Brahman. The chapter of the Avanti Brahman. It's the 11th canto.
Okay, 11th canto.
Yeah. I'll read the 15 deficiencies. Too much wealth. And this is from the Avanti Brahman. He was so wealthy.
Chapter number 23, the song of the Avanti Brahmana. Is that the one, Maharaj?
Yeah, try that one. I think that's it. Yeah. Here. Okay. He was very wealthy, but he was a miser, and nobody liked him. His parents, his friends, and his family members would stay around trying to get things from him. but they never liked him. And then at one point, he had a misfortune, he lost everything. And everybody left him. They wanted nothing to do with him. Friends, family members, everything. Because he was such a, harsh person. So it says here, he considered how the earning and preservation of wealth involved great effort, fear, anxiety, and confusion. Because of wealth, there are 15 unwanted items: thievery, violence, lying, deception, lust, anger, pride, feverishness, disagreement, hatred, distrust, conflict, attachment to women, gambling, and intoxication. These are the 15, what we say, unwanted items that come with too much wealth. We don't say wealth, we say too much wealth. When this meditation arose in the heart, the Brahmin could understand that the Supreme Lord Sri Hari had somehow become satisfied with him. He felt that only because the Lord was pleased with him, he had an apparently unfavorable turn of events in his life, and therefore he lost everything materially. But when he did, he understood it was the arrangement of the Lord, and he took shelter of the Lord and became a great devotee. So he saw his misfortune as a good fortune because it brought him to take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So one should worship Lakshmi Devi in relationship to Vishnu, not separate from them. As the materialists try to do that, they want what she can give rather than what she is connected with, and that is Vishnu or Narayan. And we can learn, from this purport that by worshiping Krishna, engaging in devotional service, Krishna says, he takes care of his devotee. The devotee has no anxiety about material things, because if they worship the Lord very nicely, the Lord wants to favor his devotee, so he gives his favor in so many different ways. Even if the devotee doesn't ask for anything material, if he's worshiping very nicely, the Lord will say, oh, that's what this person wants, but they don't want to ask it for me, but that's what they want. That's why I'll give it for them, because that will make them happy. When Kolavetra Sridhar was worshiping the Supreme Lord, Lord Chaitanya, and Lord Chaitanya was coming to him every day, and he was selling banana leaves, banana cups, banana plates, and for a few pice, he was taking that, using half of it to worship Ganga Devi, and whatever little he had, he would somehow manage his life. He was very, very poor by all material standards. But the Lord would come and harass him and say, hey, sweetheart, how much for your banana plates and cups? And he would quote a price. The Lord would say, too much, you're cheating the Brahmin. Then he would say, no, you can go anywhere. This is the best of all kinds. No. I'm coming here because you have good quality, but still you're cheating the Brahmins too much. No, you have so much wealth, I know, and you're hiding that. And he had a house with holes in the roof, and he had a pot that he used to use for all of his cleaning. He would take baths with it, he would wash with it, and it was full of dents and holes. And said in the sky, it says there that pot was so bad that even the most desperate thief would not steal it. So when Lord Chaitanya said, someday I'm going to reveal to everyone your hidden wealth. No, I don't want it. And so the Lord would harass him. And finally, one day, of course, there was that famous pastime where the Lord revealed himself as the Lord. And then Sridhar was invited by the devotees to come. And when he saw who Lord Chaitanya, that Brahmin who was coming every day to buy his cups and plates, was actually the Supreme Lord, he fell down in devotion. And then when he woke up, the Lord said, Sridhar, please, you please me so much. Take a benediction from me. He said, what? I'm happy just serving you every day. Just keep coming and harassing me every day. Buy my cups and plates. And the Lord said, no, I want to give you a benediction. And he said, ask anything you want. I'm prepared to give it. You want a nice wife? You want some money? You want a planet? I'll give you a planet. You have your own planet. Sorry, at the end, he said, my Lord, I'm happy. Why you want to make my life miserable? So Lord Chaitanya did reveal his wealth. His wealth is bhakti. That's what he was trying to say. That's but Sridhar couldn't understand that. So that is real wealth. They say the lowest form of wealth is money. Higher than money is knowledge. Higher than knowledge is austerity. And higher than austerity is bhakti. These are the four kinds of wealth. Mentioned. So austerity leads to bhakti ultimately. If it's done according to the scriptures, of course. So money is what it is. It has value up to a certain point, but real wealth is bhakti. And bhakti is the means by which Krishna is attracted. When there's bhakti, Krishna becomes very much attracted by your bhakti. Bhakti amam avajananti yavandyas tapti tatparana. Only by bhakti can I be understood. Okay, so we'll stop here and open it up for questions. We have some extra time today, so we can.
Yes, Maharaj. Thank you. Thank you for the class. Very nice description. Thank you. Dear devotees, any questions or comments or realizations, you can please go ahead. Please turn on your cameras if possible. Thank you.
There's 20 devotees sitting with me on site there also.
Okay, Maharaj. Hare Krishna. Sure, Maharaj.
Okay, so let's see if there's any questions online.
Yes, Maharaj, I'm seeing no raised hands yet. So, Maharaj, while others are thinking, can I ask a question? So, you were mentioning about the quality of the equanimity. So, can devotees practice like usually most of the time will be like partial to whoever we know or whoever we don't know. So, we don't really bother much. So, yeah, equanimity is a great quality. It should be practiced, I know, but how we can do it practically, Maharaj?
When you see, the question is, how can we practice equanimity? When you see that all living beings are part and parcel of Krishna, everyone is a soul, although they have a particular type of body. We make the distinction based on the body. So rather than, as it says, Vidya Vinaya Sampane, Brahmani Gavi Hastini, Suni Chaiva Swapakecha, Pandita Samadarshana. Samadarshana means to see equal. So a pandit, or one who sees correctly, sees not the body, but the soul within the body as the actual person. Bodies are different according to our material activities and the karma that brought us to those. We have different types of bodies, but ultimately everyone is equal on the spiritual platform. Everyone is a soul, part and parcel of Krishna. So we have to relate to people based on these two principles in a combined way. So you can't say, well, the tiger, he's also a spirit soul. He is. But therefore you go up and say, my dear tiger, you're such a nice spirit soul. Here, let me embrace you. That'll be a problem. So you have to make that distinction in terms of relationship. But relationships should be done in the mood of concern. In other words, what is the ideal relationship with all living entities? The mood of service. When you're with someone, then you're thinking, if you want to be in the right consciousness, you're trying to serve that person. That is the foundation by which all relationships develop. When you're trying to get something from someone, then you're in a different mindset, and you're in the I, me, and mine mode. When you're trying to serve, then you're in the mood of bhakti. So in all aspects of relationship, it's the mood of service that really makes the relationship develop. And that service has different qualities to it: concern, compassion, generosity, various types of moods that develop in the mood of service. And you see, that's what the great souls, they do. Wherever they are, they're in the mood of service. They serve the living entities by giving them Krishna consciousness, or they may even serve by giving them some advice or giving time. So, but the consciousness is how can I serve in each and every situation, and then that equanimity will automatically be part of that. And you people equally. Sometimes you have to serve in such a way that the person is getting some correction by your service. You do that with your children. Sometimes you have to serve by giving some personal sacrifice in order to make that service complete. But service is the mood. So that's who we are. We can only serve. We can't do anything else. And that's all we do in the material world anyway. But our service is motivated by personal gain. That's material. Spiritual life in the service is motivated by trying to please the object of who we are serving. That's the difference.
Yes, Maharaj. Yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah. Got it.
Any questions? Okay, I'm taking the question from the local audience. Yeah.
Yes, Maharaj.
Okay, I'll repeat it.
Yes.
What is it? Karma?
Regarding the Lord Shiva, not to do with prayer or worship, just of material.
Yeah.
It's okay to have Lord Shiva. I like that. There are so many gods. Vijaya, Lord Shiva. It's okay to have.
Well, Krishna says that whatever the demigods can give, the power that they can give is coming from me. One who worships the demigods ultimately is worshiping me because I'm giving them the power by which the benedictions the demigods give me. So an intelligent person will think, just like it says that Ganesh worships Nrsingadev. He carries the lotus feet of Lord Nrsingadev on his tuck. And it's mentioned in the Nectar Devotion that if you want to get protection, material protection, you can worship Ganesh. But then the logical understanding is, why not go right to Nrsingadev? Because that's who he's worshiping. And we can do that. But we can also pray to those who worship, the people that we want to worship. Just like we can pray to Lord Shiva to help us worship Lord Krishna. And he will. He'll help you. He'll give you mercy. He'll give you some guidance. Like that. So Krishna recommends in the Bhagavad Gita, especially in the 7th chapter, that those who worship the demigods are less intelligent because whatever the demigods can give is coming ultimately from them. But in Vedic society, there's so many rituals for demigod worship. But if you worship your spiritual master in serving the Supreme Lord in that way, then the devas are already pleased. Because the devas are angas, or limbs of the Supreme Lord, and therefore, if you please the Supreme Lord, the demigods are automatically pleased. That's why Krishna lifted Govardhan Hill. Because why did he lift Govardhan Hill? But why did he tell Nanda Maharaj not to worship Lord Indra, but to worship Govardhan Hill in Macau? Just to show that demigod worship is not necessary. That everything comes from the Supreme Lord. And therefore, I know there's so many. Sometimes the ladies worship so their husbands can be healthy and happy. And how husbands think, my God, good wife, she's worshiping for me. But if you worship Krishna, your husband will be okay. All of these things. So it's like, if you want to go to your nose, you can go like this. Or you can just go like that. So demigod worship is mentioned in the Shastras for those who can't worship the Supreme Lord, who won't worship the Supreme Lord. Better you do some kind of worship, just to keep you in what is called within the context of Vedic culture, Vedic worship. That's for people who won't surrender to the Lord. But those who surrender to the Lord, as Krishna says, what does he say? He says, Manmana Bhava, what's the next one? Sarva Dharma Pariksha Mame comes. Give up all your other ideas how you can make advancement and just surrender to me. And he said, I'll take care of you. He said, Ma Suchaha. Don't worry, hesitate, don't fear. Ma Suchaha, the last line in that verse, Ma Suchaha has three meanings. Don't hesitate, don't fear, don't worry. Just surrender to me. Take care of it. So he's asking for that. And if we surrender to Krishna, Krishna is there. He takes care of his devotees completely. And he may not give you what you want, but he'll give you what you need. And sometimes he gives you what you want. That's Krishna. He's very kind. But we're habituated for demigod worship. Right? We grew up in that atmosphere and we think that's what has to go on. But ultimately, when Krishna is the source of the demigods, he says, Aham Adi Devanam. He says that in the first chapter. He said, Aham Sarvasya Prabhavo Mata Summa Pravartante Iti Mata Vojante Mam Buddha Bhava Samandityahan. I am the source of all material and spiritual worlds. Everything comes from me. The wise who know this worship me. The wise who know this worship me with all their heart. So he says, if you're actually wise, you know that everything is coming from me. So why worship? Why waste time with other forms of worship? So right to Krishna. And we can do that. But we can take help from the demigods to help us in our worship. So we do that also. The word bhajate means worship. And the word applies only to the Supreme Lord. We can't really worship the demigod. We can, our relationship with the demigod is like business. It's like you go to the store and you give some money, and the proprietor of the store, he gives you the merchandise. That's demigod worship. You offer some, so you offer some prayer, and that deva will maybe give you something, not guaranteed. But when you worship Krishna, you're getting free from all material anxieties, attachments, and you're actually becoming happy, and you're moving closer to Krishna in devotion. So, is that okay? Thank you. Yes, see, we have a question online here.
Yeah.
Very much.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. My question is,
Speak nice and loud because I have an audience here. They can hear you if you speak loud.
yeah. So my question is, you have mentioned like initiation means it's in the heart. It's a heartfelt commitment. Like you mentioned, like a formality, like which we do. It's not really an initiation. It should come through heart. So, like, how should we it's at a conscious level. How should we understand this? So, yeah.
Before you take the formal initiation, you should understand that to become a disciple means to follow the instructions throughout your whole life. 16 rounds for regulative principles and practically engaging in some devotional activity. You should be inspired in that way. If you're not inspired in that way, then you're not really ready for initiation. The initiation process gives you a chance to come to that inspiration. That's why we have what is called, we call it aspiring. There's a process of 1 year at least that you aspire for the spiritual master. And then after 1 year, there's some mutual evaluation. And if one comes up to the certain standard, then they can say, well, that person is serious and ready to take the next step, which is the formal ceremony.
So Guru Maharaj, like sometimes it also happens, I notice like some devotees, they are very much inclined to a spiritual master guru. They are very much consciously connected with them. But some reason, taking a step of initiation, going through that formality, it's kind of little bit difficult for them. So how should you understand? Are they like initiated in the conscious level?
Well, the process is that one has to take the formal vows also, because you're actually consummating your vows in front of the Supreme Lord, who is represented by the sacred fire, by the assembly of Vaishnavas who are there, by the spiritual master who is not only there, but he's also representing the entire disciplic succession. So this helps one to understand the seriousness of one's commitment. And that's important. So that formal initiation is required.
So both are important. At conscious level.
Yes. Yeah.
Mhm.
It's just like you say, well, I want to get married, but I don't want to go through the ceremony. We're married. How do you go? I love you and you love me. We're married. You say, well, what about the ceremony? Well, we don't need that. We just, we're husband and wife. No, you have to go through that ceremony to make it official and to formulate those vows within the heart.
Okay, Guru Maharaj, thank you. Yeah, I have one more question, but I can wait if other devotees would like to.
It's like Prabhupada talks about when boy, he has to go for his examination in school. So he goes, and his father asks him, well, how'd you do on the test when he comes back? He said, well, He said, well, the questions that I didn't know, I didn't answer. And the ones I knew, why should I answer? Because I knew them anyway. You get the point?
Yes, Guru Maharaj.
Okay. Point is, we have to show by following the process that is given by the Parampara system, we must take the formal vows. Also. And that helps us to stay fixed in our Krishna consciousness. That is something that is supportive of what's in the heart. That's important. It's one of the samskaras called Upanaya Samskara. It's a requirement.
Thank you, Maharaj. Thank you. Dear devotees, any more questions or comments or realizations?
You're losing some of the folks here. I guess when I talked about initiation, they went away. Any questions from here? Yes. We got
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. Thank you so much for this lovely lecture. And yes, it is really necessary that we take the vow, because otherwise we will never be sure if we are serious or not. And we have to really be serious. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Yeah.
They will like solar system, give example of solar system. So sometimes in a devotee's life, Krishna loves devotees, but for the purification process, Krishna wants to test them, purify them. But some devotees are not in that level to understand how Krishna is purifying, and they will get sometimes drilled up and of getting and oh, Krishna is doing testing me kind. So those situations, how devotees have to handle. Yes, they know that Krishna loves them.
Yeah.
They have faith, but the situation is going beyond their imagination.
But beyond their preconception, beyond their own conception. As Prabhupada said, Krishna will not test you beyond your ability to pass. But you may think that it's too much. Therefore, you have to understand that he is giving you a test, but he's also giving you the means by which you can overcome or pass the test. And therefore, we can't understand it or even execute it. We have the association with the Society of Devotees, where we can get help, get advice about, how we should understand this. And maybe, so talking to your friends or other devotees, or maybe even to the spiritual master, or someone who's on the same level of a spiritual master, will help us to understand deeper that yes, Krishna is testing you, but there is a benefit in it. You just have to understand it. So, just like, and you have to ask for advice in that case. If you know how to do it yourself, and you're understandable, but your question is, you're not. So, therefore, getting advice. Sometimes we don't want to get advice because we think, I might get the wrong advice. Well, we may go to many and see if the same advice comes from so many different people. I had that personally in my life when I went to many people. And some were saying one side and some were saying the other side. But then I understood, if I'm going to understand how to act in this situation, I have to hear the voice of Krishna coming through the person that I'm speaking to. I was listening, trying to understand who was actually speaking. And some were, but I couldn't realize it through them. You know, some were not. And so I didn't really know what to do. And then one person, when I spoke to him, as soon as he spoke, it went right to my heart, and boom, the answer was given. I had already heard the same answer from others, but when I heard it in that way, I was sure that this was it. So therefore that's the purpose of our society of devotees, is to support each other in our struggle with become Krishna. And the resources are there. We just have to seek them out.
Like, yes, we follow, but as we hear Acharya, they will say, one Krishna, please, one whole world, it on me, I will solve it. That kind of level they have. But in our life, when we go places, difficult situations, some devotees, not some of the some people will start telling, they will be get disturbed. So how we have to make our faith strong and more Krishna conscious towards Krishna. How we have to make increase our faith, not affecting on, we should not get effect on the second.
Because people are not understanding what we're doing. If you're pleasing Krishna, that's all that counts. People will understand later. Some people don't understand, and some people think they understand. And so, huh? Non-devotees, don't worry about them. They have their own, the non-devotees have their own value system. Just like sometimes devotees have mental or spirit or psychological problems. So they want to get those problems, so they go to the non-devotees for advice. And sometimes the non-devotees actually say it's because of your spiritual practice you're having all these problems. And they convince, I've seen that, they've even convinced devotees to give up at least part of their spiritual practice. And that way, then they say, well, then that's the problem. So they advise that your spiritual life, or the way you're doing your spiritual life, is actually causing you the problem. So therefore we should go to devotee council and not people from the outside, because they don't understand what it means to be a devotee. Because they're not practicing. A non-devotee can never understand a devotee. They may think by looking and observing, but they don't know the mood of a devotee or the life of a devotee. Their life is the other way around. They see everything from the point of view of me, whereas devotee sees everything in the point of view of Krishna as this now. Yeah, so we don't take advice from non-devotees. 100%. Unless they say something that is in line with devotional life. Then that will also work. Just like sometimes they say you can take gold from a filthy place. Because it's gold, even if it comes from a filthy place, it's still gold. But it has to be in line with religious principles or spiritual values. Otherwise, it has no value. Yes. We got any more questions online?
Revati Mataji has one more question. Is it okay to take, Maharaj?
Well, we have one more here. We'll take that, and then Vaivathi can go next.
Okay, okay, Maharaj.
I have time today, so we're not in a hurry, so you can formulate your questions and we'll eventually get to all the questions.
Sure, Maharaj.
Yes, Akshaya? Oksana. Okay, we have when we have different,
When we have difficulties in life,
well, life is difficult.
right? How do we know that it is reaction of our past decisions or it is Krishna testing us?
The question is, when we have difficulties in life, how do we understand whether it's due to our past decisions, past activities, or it's Krishna testing us? We answer that the same way. It doesn't matter. Just deal with the difficulty. Whether it's coming from the past or it's coming from Krishna. It's still something you have to deal with. It's something you have to accept. So it says that there is an element called tolerance. And this tolerance, it comes by way of natural, just living in this material world. The verse in the Bhagavad Gita. Marta sparsas tu kuntaya sitnosna sita dukkhadat. The non-permanent appearance and happiness and distress, and their disappearance in due course of time, is like the appearance and disappearance of the winter and summer seasons. They rise from sense perception, or ski in a bark, and one must learn to tolerate them without becoming disturbed. So that's just living in this world. The elements will give you trouble. People will give you trouble. The higher powers, demigods, will also give you trouble. It's the way it is. But then there's another. Tatenu kampa shushamikshamanam buddhaneva kitam vipakam vidva vahupir viradhanamaste jiveti yo mukti padesha dayava. So that Krishna, in order to purify one from some attachment, will cause that devotee some difficulty just to detach them from that desire for sense gratification, or to force that person to take more shelter at his lotus feet. And that comes by way of Krishna. So you see, both of these things are coming, the difficulties are coming from either Krishna or from the material energy. But it doesn't matter. In either case, take shelter of Krishna. Even if it comes from the material energy, still take shelter of Krishna. And pray to Krishna. Mm.
Okay,
Okay.
Maharaj. Sridevi Mataji has raised her hand.
Question?
Sridevi Mataji.
Thank you, Srimati. Dear Guru Maharaj, thank you for today's class. I've been thinking about the equanimity that Yudhishthir maintained even in the most trying circumstances. And I would like to ask a question. When unexpectedly we come across people who are rude or insolent or behaving in a very harsh, gentle way without any Vaishnava etiquette, unexpectedly, we don't expect that behavior and people behave like that. How should we react in such a situation?
You can say, well, why are you acting like that? Why are you being so rude, so harsh? That happened to me. I was in Kirtan, and everyone was dancing nicely, and one guy came, he couldn't dance, and he came right in the middle of our Kirtan, and I pushed him. I pushed him out of the thing. And then later on, he came up to me and said, "Boy, you were rude to me." Then I apologized. But he questioned me, why were you so rude to me and I wanted to say, well, you tried to ruin our kirtan, I didn't say that, because I knew that wouldn't be the way to react. So I just apologized for behaving the way I did. And that made it nice. And he said thank you and forgave me, and I thanked him and I forgave him. And it was nice. So, but he did say, why are you acting like that? And you can ask. And that makes them explain. And then you have something to deal with. Take a look at the books if you have time. These are Krishna's way, natural living. Okay, it seems like we ran out of questions.
Yeah, Revati Mataji is there still, Maharaj. Maharaj. Revati Mataji, you want to ask your question?
Yeah, Hare Krishna, Mataji. Thank you. It's a similar question to Sridevi Mataji's. Like when we develop that ill thoughts, like due to some bad experiences, so how to get over those thoughts because that blocks us to be in the mood of service.
You're in control of your thoughts. Just change your thoughts.
So
you have to forcibly change them, but just change your thoughts. Instead of thinking bad, think good. Instead of thinking about Maya, think about Krishna. Instead of speaking something material, chant the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. So just change your way you act. That's your mother? Yeah, just say, yeah. All right, so Maya pops into our mind and starts giving us some thoughts. You realize, oh, this is not good. So think of Krishna. Chant Krishna's name. That you can do. Don't dwell on the negative.
okay, thank you very much, Hare Krishna.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we can end here.
Yes, Maharaj. Thank you so much. I hope there are no more questions online.
Okay. I won't be available tomorrow because I give class at the temple.
Yes, Maharaj.
I don't know if it's live streamed or not. Do they live stream it? It is live stream. It's at the same time. It's at 8 o'clock.
Okay, Maharaj.
And Thursday, Radhanath Swami will be giving class in the temple at the same time, 8 o'clock, and I will be there also. So the online class will continue on Friday.
Okay, Maharaj, sure.
You want to connect to our live stream? It's tomorrow. It's myself, and then on Thursday it's Radhanath Swami for Bhagavatam class.
Sure, Maharaj. Sure, definitely. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
To all of you.
Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Thank you. His Holiness Candramauli Swami Maharaj ki jai.
Jai. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, dear devotees.
Thank you, Guru Maharaj. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj.